Why would a person voluntarily eat sawdust, silk, gravel, and pieces of gold? For example, to study the speed at which inedible objects pass through the digestive tract. And the fact that gold turned out to be the fastest, physiologist Friedrich Hetzel realized almost 100 years ago. He is, of course, not alone. Self-experimentation has been one of the main tools of science for centuries, and many of these experiments might seem crazy. Take, for example, the dietary tests of Dr. William Stark, who in the 18th century, in search of the cause of scurvy, gradually eliminated different foods from his diet until he died of malnutrition. Here's a modern example. The antagonist from our TikTok era, blogger Cyrode, dies after a 40-day fasting challenge. Over the next 16 minutes, you will see the most controversial experiments that researchers conducted on themselves. We have gathered a variety of experiments, differing in depth, length, and scientific rigor. And we've saved what we think is the most interesting one for last. However, see for yourself, everyone will find something here to be surprised by. So let's get started. 70 years ago, before Bombard's experiment, searches for survivors after a shipwreck at sea were called off just a week after they began. They believed further searching was pointless, since no survivors remained. Well, after that experiment, thousands of shipwreck victims were saved thanks to the experience gained and the cancellation of the deadly one-week limit. What kind of experiment was it? On October 19, 1952, the French doctor Alain Bombard set out from the Canary port of Las Palmas on the Standard, a standard inflatable lifeboat. And this crazy doctor set foot on solid ground only after 65 days, reaching the island of Barbados. In total, Alain's boat traveled about 6,000 kilometers. He had with him a sealed chest with food, in case the experiment failed, and antibiotics. Before the big solo journey, he did a smaller trial run with a partner. And finally, he began what, in those days without navigation devices and phones, was a completely suicidal experiment. At sea, he kept a detailed diary that included many medical indicators to understand how the body functions under such extreme conditions. The biggest question in the middle of the ocean in hot latitudes is where and how to get water, and how to lose less of it. Bombard found several ways to obtain precious moisture. He drank rainwater, condensation from the sail and the sides of the boat, and fresh lymph from the fish he caught. Also, you can drink small amounts of seawater for a short period, no longer than 5 or 6 days, otherwise salt poisoning will occur. And also, besides fish, you should collect plankton. You can do this with a sock. It's nutritious. Not the sock, of course, but the plankton. It contains a lot of useful nutrients. Of course, nowadays plankton probably contains quite a bit of plastic. But if you really want to survive, it'll just be like a seasoning. By the end of the journey, Bombard was covered in festering sores. His skin started peeling off in patches, and he lost several nails. He also lost about 25 kilograms, but he was alive and even relatively healthy, and the little chest with food remained untouched. This example vividly demonstrates the power of knowledge. After all, for the shipwreck victims who had read or heard about Bombard, this saved their lives. Sleep is just a bad habit. That's how the article by American architect Robert Fuller begins, who, back in 1943, suggested optimizing life by sleeping on an unusual schedule. 30 minutes every 6 hours. In fact, polyphasic sleep is a common phenomenon in nature. Many animals, unlike us, don't spend the whole night sleeping, but instead sleep in short periods and use the intervals for more important activities. It is believed that one type of polyphasic sleep, 15 minutes every 4 hours, was used by Leonardo da Vinci to increase his productivity. In 1936, the Swiss artist Francesco Jost tried this schedule on himself. He managed to stay quite alert during the 48-day experiment, and by the 10th day, he had reached those very same 15-minute sleep breaks used by Leonardo. The Fuller schedule was tested in 2005 by another person, the well-known blogger Stephen Pavlino. For as long as 5.5 months, he slept in short bursts for 2 to 3 hours a day, while still continuing his usual activities, like driving a car. And what else? No, he wasn't following a super healthy lifestyle, but instead played poker at Las Vegas casinos at night. Both experiences showed that the body can adapt fairly quickly to changes in biorhythms. But when it comes to productivity, things are more complicated. In any case, the artist Jost, unlike Da Vinci and Fuller, did not create any masterpieces during the experiment. As a result, he, like Stephen Pavlino, gave up polyphasic sleep. But, by the way, not at all because of a desire to catch up on sleep, but simply because sleeping so little turned out to be not very convenient in a world where everyone else shuts down for the night. The founder of the biotechnology company BioViva, Liz Parrish, decided to test on herself 2 anti-aging technologies developed under her leadership: an injection of a myostatin inhibitor, which slows down age-related muscle loss, plus a revolutionary telomerase therapy. Her idea is to use a modified virus to lengthen telomeres, segments of DNA whose shortening is associated with aging and degenerative diseases, by introducing it into one of the chromosomes. Parrish claims that during therapy, she became 20 years younger. After all, the telomeres in her blood samples lengthened over 6 months of therapy, and the increase is equivalent to about 20 years. However, there are 2 problems. First, it is still unclear whether the shortening of telomeres is actually the cause of aging or just a side effect. And secondly, the approximately 9% increase in telomeres observed in Parrish's case is within the standard margin of measurement error. But the experiments that began in 2015 are still ongoing, so it's too early to judge the results. Experiments are nothing new for the journalist A.J. Jacobs. Once, he strictly followed all the principles of a healthy lifestyle for an entire year. Another time, he personally thanked every single person, literally everyone, without whom he wouldn't have been able to enjoy his morning cup of favorite coffee. From the shop assistant in New York to the miner in Canada, who extracted the ore used to make the metal for his coffee machine. But his boldest experiment was 30 days of radical honesty. This self-improvement practice was developed by psychotherapist Brad Blanton, who believes that the main source of our persistent psychological stress is that we constantly lie and twist the truth to please those around us. Want to live more simply? Be uncompromisingly honest? Jacobs was required by the experiment to always tell the truth to everyone, no matter who they were or the situation. In his book, The Guinea Pig Diaries, he honestly writes that by the end of the first week, he barely managed to reduce the amount of lies by only 40%. And even at that proportion, the truth did not make his life any easier. Many people tend to be more honest when others are honest with them, and that's not always pleasant. The experiment had to be stopped because, if it had continued, it would have cost Jacobs, first, his job, second, a couple of bruises, third, a lawsuit for inappropriate behavior, and fourth, a divorce from his wife. What do you think will happen after such a diet? Film director Morgan Spurlock didn't bother to think. He just decided to test it on himself and film it. For 30 days in 2004, he faithfully had breakfast, lunch, and dinner at McDonald's fast food restaurants, not missing a single dish from cheeseburgers to cheesecake. And he always ordered a double portion, super size. In total, he consumed about 5,000 kilocalories a day, especially since he tried not to compromise the integrity of the experiment by exercising. The results are shocking. In a month, he gained more than 11 kilograms, started suffering from mood swings, sexual dysfunction, and liver problems. It took more than a year to lose the weight he gained and recover. There was one good thing. Shortly after the release of his film Super Size Me, McDonald's stopped selling double portions. Subtitles: James Hamblin hasn't showered for 5 years. His water hasn't been shut off at home, and he's not crazy. Moreover, he's a doctor and even a professor at the Yale School of Public Health. He just believes, like some other doctors, that modern people wash themselves too often. When we shower with soap, we wash away not only dirt and sweat, but also some microorganisms, along with the natural skin oils that protect our skin from infections and nourish beneficial bacteria. Hamblin decided to see what would happen if he let his body return to its natural state. Instead of showering every day, he started doing it once every 3 days and then completely stopped using cleansing products. The experiment began as curiosity and became a way of life. In the end, nothing terrible happened. On the contrary, my skin cleared up and became less oily. But what about the smell? At first, it took some getting used to without soap. While the microbial populations on my skin were reorganizing, my body smelled strong and unpleasant. But then, the skin ecosystem balanced out, and Hamblin, according to him, started to smell not good, not bad, but just like a human. If you had been on the shore of Lake Eyasi in Tanzania in August 2013, you might have seen a man in shorts lying on his back, pedaling an imaginary bicycle in the air. That was the anthropologist Jeff Leach, who had just transplanted into his own gut, using a syringe, the feces of one of the local Hadza hunter-gatherer tribe members. He decided to undertake this risky experiment with fecal transplantation to test on himself the theory of microbiome extinction, which suggests that modern humans have lost about a third of the diversity of gut bacteria due to antibiotics and the abundance of fats and sugars in our diet. This has caused imbalances in the microbiome, which have led to our increased susceptibility to many diseases. The Hadza have one of the most diverse gut ecosystems in the world, with almost twice as many bacteria as we do. At the same time, they do not suffer from the common cardiovascular and autoimmune diseases, diabetes, and obesity found in the civilized world. Litch compares fecal transplantation to gene exchange. The human microbiome contains about 23,000 genes, but overall, our bodies have 5 to 10 million wandering genes carried by the bacteria living in the gut. It turns out that during his experiment to roll back his microbiome to its evolutionary past, he tried to replace 99 genes in his body. In the end, the main result is, Litch is alive and well. After the transplant, he only managed to get rid of flatulence and lose a little weight before he was accused of harassment. These accusations put an end to further experiments, so how it all ended is unknown. At the same time, in our modern times, such a procedure is no longer something crazy. Here, for example, from recent news, a truly miraculous recovery of 2 patients with COVID happened after they received a transplant of healthy fecal microbiota. Initially, the doctors who gave the patients a transplant of solid human waste didn't know that they were infected with COVID. This procedure, which may seem unappealing at first glance, was prescribed to them for another reason: to treat an acute bacterial infection. Both patients were in the high-risk group. One of the patients was only 19 years old and his immune system was weakened. The other patient was 80 years old, but despite this, they both had a moderate case of COVID. Their temperature returned to normal just a couple of days after it went up. Well, as they say, things took off from there. Now they're planning to start clinical trials of fecal microbiota transplantation for treating COVID. Jasper Lawrence spent 2 weeks in 2006 wandering barefoot through the villages of Cameroon, looking for latrines. His goal was to infect himself with blood-sucking parasitic worms called hookworms, which are common in countries with tropical and subtropical climates. Their larvae really like to travel through the body. They enter the bloodstream through the soles of the feet after contact with human feces, travel through the heart and lungs, after which a person coughs them up and swallows them. Then they end up in the small intestine, where they live for about 5 years. In the late 1980s, immunologist David Pritchard noticed that people infected with hookworms rarely suffered from autoimmune diseases. Later, he also proved that in small numbers they are able to regulate inflammatory immune responses in their hosts. Jasper Lawrence, who had suffered all his life from chronic hay fever, allergies, and asthma, as well as being overweight, learned about the radical treatment from his aunt, who heard about it on the radio, and he decided to try it at his own risk. A few months after the infection, Lawrence's asthma and allergy symptoms disappeared. He stopped taking prednisolone and was able to start exercising, which helped him lose the extra weight. That's how he became a well-known advocate of helminth therapy, and is convinced that hookworms can even help with multiple sclerosis. And this would just be a curious case if it weren't for the facts discovered by doctors, which prove that there really is a connection between these seemingly completely different things. A group of scientists led by Nicholas Fernham from the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine decided to find out why the part of the immune system responsible for resisting parasites causes an allergic reaction, and also to understand how it chooses which proteins to attack. Allergies occur because immunoglobulins, which are responsible for the functioning of the body's immune system, recognize a certain range of proteins found in plants and food. It turned out that one of the most striking cases of similarity between parasitic and allergenic proteins is a pair of proteins found in the human roundworm and in the pollen of the silver birch tree. Their protein composition is 27% identical, which causes the human immune system to react to them in a similar way. The lead author of the scientific article, Nicholas Fernham, comments on the results of the work as follows. Our research was aimed at solving a complex question. What makes an allergen an allergen? We have shown that the body's immune system reacts to certain proteins because they are similar to proteins produced by parasitic worms. It turns out that allergy is the price humans pay for having immunity to parasitic infections. On this optimistic note, let's wrap things up. Tell us in the comments what experiments you've tried on yourself. And of course, turn on notifications so you don't miss future episodes. See you.